నమస్తే ప్రసాద్ గారు.
నమస్కారం అండి. How are you?
ఐఎమ్ డూయింగ్ గుడ్ సార్. మీతో ఇంటరాక్షన్ అయ్యే అవకాశం దొరికినందుకు ఐఎమ్ వెరీ గ్లాడ్ గాట్ అన్ ఆపర్చునిటీ టు డిస్కస్ మోర్ టాపిక్స్ అబౌట్ లీడర్షిప్ అండ్ స్ట్రాటజిక్ విజన్. మీ గురించి మీ ప్రొఫైల్ లో కానీ మీరు చేసిన కాంట్రిబ్యూషన్స్ టువర్డ్స్ వీడియోస్ అండ్ ఇంటరాక్షన్స్ విత్ మెనీ పీపుల్ అన్ని చూసాను. దెన్ ఐ గాట్ lot of questions to ask to. Chala information మీరు already next generation కి already contribute చేశారు. So I want to be a bit specific and more useful to people like me who has been into IT industry and trying to explore different opportunities and trying to think how leadership thinks and how they strategize their vision అనే స్పెసిఫిక్ టాపిక్స్ పైన మీతో డిస్కస్ చేద్దాం అనుకుంటున్నాను.
Sure, తప్పకుండా చేద్దాం.
Introduction of myself. So I'm Santosh and I've been into IT industry since 22 years. Seen a small phase of what you have seen. So we have been into industry and we are working on many projects and I've seen one phase of IT industry transforming into different phases. So when we will keep the topic precise to strategic leadership and management. So when we say theoretically all the strategies looks good, maybe you will also agree, but when it comes to implementation, we'll see a different phase of it. The aspiration of the leaders, when they started, and the challenges what they face it, and by the time we step into the implementation phase, what is, as per your experience, why do you think such policies usually fail while transforming into reality?
There are three reasons I can think about why aspiring leaders fail in making these aspirations come alive. ఒకటి ఏంటంటే, ఫస్ట్ థింగ్ ఈజ్ aspiration can come out of one's own vision, one's own dreams, and one's own what you might call deeper, meaningful purpose that they have. But generally those aspirations might not be grounded in the context, political environment, or the work environment that they are working in. That is good. That is not necessarily bad, because it is important that we should have visions irrespective of the work environment or company or organization that we work for. But once you have an aspiration, then the connection between the ground reality and aspiration is where the developmental work that need to happen, so that those aspirations will take root in the culture of the organization that we are working with. That way, other people who are in that culture will support us, and together we create a shared vision of making those aspirations a reality. But in doing so, there are several things. One is knowing the political reality. Number two, creating a plan that works with our aspiration to become successful in the current organizational environment. Third, figuring out a way to, what you might call, withdraw a little bit and push forward a little bit, develop other leaders a little bit, and to be able to stand for your principles a little bit. There are a variety of things that have nothing to do with aspiration, but that build character of the leader. And I think those are some steps, if we are not carefully, strategically, and tactically being wise, then many aspirations will only end up as dreams. And at the end of it, we say, this didn't work, I didn't work, this organization doesn't work, or the leaders don't support. All of those will come. So first is having a clear aspiration and having it as a purpose or a dream, no matter where we go. Second is the awareness of the context, awareness of what works and what doesn't work, to be able to create a pathway, or another way to say is workable plan. Third one is, in execution, there will be a lots of ups and downs, and you need to enroll a lot of different people, and you need to use different styles of leadership and management to either push forward or take a back seat, depending on various things. So the execution style, when we have all the three work together, then leaders have a higher chances of their aspirations come true. If not, we will have some difficulty either in vision or in passion and tempering it, or in action. Only when vision, passion, action are aligned, you produce extraordinary results.
That's a great answer, sir. So theoretically, on the same topic, earlier we are hearing a lot of the term called strategy in the recent times. When earlier it was దీనికంటే ముందు మనం ఓన్లీ లీడర్షిప్ అని వినేవాళ్ళం, లేదంటే మేనేజ్మెంట్ అని వినేవాళ్ళము. ఈ మధ్య కాలంలో ఎక్కువగా స్ట్రాటజిక్ లీడర్షిప్ కానీ స్ట్రాటజిక్ మేనేజ్మెంట్ వింటున్నాం. సో స్ట్రాటజీ అనే వర్డ్ ఈ రీసెంట్ పాస్ట్ లో ఎందుకు అంత ప్రామినెన్స్ సంతరించుకుంది?
There are three ways in which again you can try to do something. One is you do it because you are in the particular place and the situation warrants it. You don't have an alternative but to go ahead and do it. You do it. That's an accidental fulfillment of your aspiration or meeting the needs of the organization. That's accidental leadership. Second one is, you know what your vision is, your aspiration is, and the organization also is aligned with you. They have given you a promotion, they have given you the resources, they have given you certain go ahead to do it. But you need to create a proper plan, because any vision will take time to execute and implement it. But it is like a boat in a moving water. A boat in a lake, you can plan it and you can execute it any way you want. But in a moving river, especially if it's a fast moving river, because most of the organizations are like boats in a fast moving river. Like for example, when everybody was ready to do something, COVID came in. When COVID got out, then there are other kinds of issues with the resources, great resignation, people leaving, all kinds of things are coming. So that means, depending on political, economic, and the people environment, based on various type of stuff, you need to strategically think about what would be appropriate when, what kind of resources you have available, what kind of competitive moves other people in the field are doing, what would get you the greatest amount of success. So this is no longer tactical execution of one step after another and you executing your plan, but strategically identifying which resource need to be deployed at what time and where, and what will have the maximum return on the investment that you are putting in. So this requires as much thinking as execution itself. So these days, as the external problems become more and more, you need more strategic thinking, strategic planning, and strategic execution. So strategy becomes more important.
Yeah, thank you, sir. On the same lines, అంటే దానికి అనుగుణంగానే when we, since you have quoted execution, IT implementation methods లో కూడా waterfall model అనేసి agile model అనేసి వచ్చాయి. So
correct.
Are we saying that I mean, when there is a waterfall model, we use a defined structure to execute things. When we have agile method, there are repetitive changes, and that has taught us to adhere to the situation. When we say strategic leadership or strategic vision, does that mean adapting to the repetitive change of the vision?
It is. There are more models than just the two which you mentioned. I think the key thing which is also beginning to happen, in addition to the agile and waterfall, people are also beginning to recognize that you need to take into account what's going on at people level. For example, because we are talking about the Indian context right now, and this is being broadcast primarily in India, let me take an example like Wipro. Wipro used to be a company, when they do the strategic plan, in addition to top-down approach, like a waterfall, it comes at a strategic level. Where are the kinds of people, whether it was Suta, whether it was Sridhar, whether it was next level, or next set of leaders, whoever comes in, they can have an objective saying, we can be number one here, we can be number one in Asia, we can get a $1 billion contracts, we can get $10 billion contracts, we can do all of that. That is what you might call a strategic vision they can have, because they realize that for the kind of resources we have. But unfortunate part of it is that doesn't necessarily mean all the people are excited and will execute according to that particular vision of the top leader, especially if you put a lot of pressure for them saying you need to grow 10% this year, 20% next year, 30% next year, people will say, sorry, we can't do it, because there is only so much of revenue you can generate from particular employee, and unless you do significant innovation or significant acquisition or different kinds of ways, you do some joint ventures or whatever other things which you do, we won't be able to get that kind of growth, they'll say. So what our companies like Wipro used to do was, we will have some idea, but let's look at people on the ground, people in the field, people who are below them. Let them also look at knowing the market conditions, knowing the customers, knowing what are all the impediments that they have, what are all the growth opportunities that they have. What do they say as their goals, their tactics, and based on their reality, they present as a possible strategic plan. So they try to take what people did, suggested at the low level, and roll it up to the next level, and roll it up to the next level, roll it up to the next level. Top management wants and what the people bottom up are saying, and then try to look at how to negotiate the gap between the two and figure out what resources, what kind of opportunities that provide these people to be motivated, or they need to get additional people, and then come up with a strategic plan. The advantage of that plan was that allowed people in the bottom to be empowered to feel like they have a say in the growth of the organization, and they also have a certain pride that what they say, if they are able to do it, there is a certain commitment, there is a certain energy, there is a certain what you might call loyalty that they build up. And there is very less resistance that comes when you propose saying this is the growth that which I can grow if I have the resources available. And if the manager says go ahead, you feel really ownership and responsibility, personal responsibility. So chances of you succeeding are exceedingly high. Where otherwise, if it is a waterfall model, it doesn't work. Agile model obviously is continually taking into account what are all the changes that are taking place and what are all the adjustments that you need to do. So there is an emergence quality to agile management that becomes very meaningful. But still, unless people own what they are doing, where they are going, sometimes we may need to add multiple ways of thinking, and that's how things happen very effectively in organizations. A combination of different models, combination of people's motivation, energy, engagement, and rewards, recognition, and other kinds of systems, together they make things happen. Whether that leads company to success or not, again, it's a complex answer that comes to.
Great. This is a great example, sir. I think one takeaway is like creating the vision, understanding the say from the next level employees. I think that's a key takeaway point. So since you have came across and read many people, చాలా మంది చూస్తుంటారు మీ జర్నీలో. I mean, I've also seen you've been a visiting professor in ISB, so you would have interacted with many people, right? So can you define, I mean, if given a chance, like what is an ideal strategic leader should be? What should be his qualities according to current situation, and creating a vision for next 10 years or 20 years?
Instead of defining it theoretically, let me give some examples of people whom I have worked with or I have come across who are of different styles and different types. And then once I give you example, we'll talk about what are the characteristics and qualities that make them effective, not so effective, somewhat effective. We'll talk about it. Because I worked with Apple, I had an opportunity to really see the strengths and weaknesses of people like Steve Jobs as well as John Scully, and then of course I had left the organization by the time Tim Cook came into the organization, but I'm still heavily invested in Apple, and I still have Apple stock and still follow a lot of Apple stories. So from that perspective, I had a chance to study them. So let's talk about the differences in strategic leadership styles and what makes them, and how much of a strategic leaders they are and how different they are. And after that, I can take another company like Ford or Boeing, or or if we can take in Indian companies like Infosys or some other, like our Ranbaxy, or which doesn't exist anymore, or Reddy Labs, or we can talk about some of the other things later. So first, Apple, I picked because once upon a time it was like an organization which almost people thought around 2000 that it will probably disappear. Sun Microsystems even tried to buy the Apple company. You may not believe it or not, for anywhere from $1 to $3 billion for the entire Apple company. Okay, and that was the situation 20 years ago. From there, now $3 trillion company, world's largest company in terms of what you call their share value and the total market cap, if you want to call it. So what are some of the strategic leadership characteristics that different people have done? Steve Jobs had an enormous vision. He had a phenomenal ability to view what is necessary, what will connect with the customers, not because he did a lot of focus studies, he did a lot of focus groups, he did a lot of customer surveys. No, but he created products for which he and other Apple employees themselves were potential customers. So in other ways, he created products that he wants to use, and he wanted to design them to the best qualities that he is proud to wear them himself, and feel that they represent best of his capability and his organization capability. Because he designed for himself and for his friends, the ability for him to do what he wants to do to the best of the capability, it became a lot easier because he has a very focused customer, and he can study, he can implement, he can understand exceedingly well. People like him, I'm talking about when it was the 80s and 90s, he was in his 30s. So he designed it for himself. So in that respect, he knew the customer, he knew their aspirations, he knew their frustrations, and he created products that are superior to whatever are available in the market. And he wanted to do them beautifully, he wanted to design them exquisitely, and he wanted them to have quality of like a Sony, because at that time he looked at Sony as one of the aspirational kinds of products, and he looked at variety of things. Like I remember going to his house when he was still a bachelor. Of course, Bay Area, most of his times he did spend in Bay Area. He was in a particular home where there were Tiffany lamps, and there was a couch and a bed, and that's about what I saw as a major furniture when I went at one time. And he bought the lamps, Tiffany lamps, because of the design. They were so exquisite. He didn't want to invest in some things unless they were exquisite. And when they were exquisite, like for example, even when he was in the later parts of his life, in like later 2006, 2007, 2008, he used to still wear, like, let us say, polo shirt and a black polo shirt. And, one time another person asked him, how come you have only polos? Why do you keep using the same shirt? He said, no, they are not same shirt. I have lots of them, all in black, same brand. And it seems Steve went and opened the shelf. He had 3 dozen of a particular quality cloth, a particular Japanese designer who had made, and he liked the shirt so much that he bought 2 or 3 dozens of them, and he wears them every day. He said, that way I don't have to think about it. So if he liked something, he invested all in. So he was strategic in one perspective of having a clarity of vision, high expectations of what he builds as a products or processes, and knowledge of the customer. All of them, he was very, very, lucky to have all the three of them. And the problem that he had was when he articulated his vision and when he articulated what he wants to do at the price point that he wants to do, there were lots of people who were interested in, but he could not execute on his vision. So he left a lot of money on the table. So his problem was not visioning, but his problem was having somebody who understands his visions and who can actually create the supply chain. He can create operational capability for the organization to deliver on the vision within the time period that they planned and within the time, cost that they expected. That was never his strength. But once Tim Cook came into, Apple organization, they became really, really remarkably good partners. While Jonathan Ive was great in terms of coming up with great designs that allowed, like an iPad or iMac or, iPhone or several of them, Jonathan Ive had a great influence, but the execution capability, supply chain management, supplier relationships, and being able to deliver the products when they promised and streamlining the entire set of operations, more credit goes to Tim Cook than Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs continued to do what he did before, but once the strategic leader like Tim Cook came into his organization, life became much simpler. Life became much more predictable. That predictability is something market likes, customers like, and that is where the repeatable sales happen. And so from that perspective, we can say Steve Jobs was excellent in strategic visioning and consumer behavior, understanding consumer and designing products exquisitely, but he was not very good in operations and making sure the execution takes place. Tim Cook, on the other hand, if I were to compare and contrast with Steve Jobs, he did not necessarily have the vision nor the customer understanding, but he had an MBA's education and he worked in Compaq and IBM and other companies where he knew what are all the processes that are required to make the operations to be very successful. So cost, quality, delivery, customer satisfaction, supplier relationships, getting various things at the right time in the right place so that right things can happen. He knew, at that time, the supply chain was not a big word. Supply chain management was not given appropriate credit at one time. And of course, the volumes were also much lower. But now the way in which Tim Cook created a supply chain showed the elements of strategic leadership that Steve Jobs himself did not have. And not only that, just to give some practical example, it seems the 90-day supply or 80-day supply was what Steve Jobs used to manage in Apple when he was a CEO in the initial stages before Tim Cook came in. That also meant if a product is a flop, then you are talking about 60 to 90 days of stock that has already been manufactured, waiting to go to the customers, was sunk. So there was a lot of losses that they needed to take. On the other hand, Tim Cook, within 60 days or 90 days of he coming into the organization, he had reduced it to less than $27 million, inventory that was there, and also bringing in processes like just in time and managing these operations so effectively and efficiently. If there were to be a failure, the losses would be significantly less. So from that kind of a spreadsheet-based management, all based on looking at numbers kind of a management approach and process management approach, he learned a lot with Steve Jobs, that when Steve left, the Apple stock dropped significantly, and people expected that all the and the app really failed. What is amazing is from 2010-11 period, when Tim Cook started really showing his true and full personality after Steve Jobs died, in past 22 years, the growth of Apple is far more than what it used to be, even when Steve Jobs was alive at that time. With Steve Jobs as in charge versus Tim Cook as in charge, Tim Cook showed more strategic leadership, more company growth, more market growth, more new product introduction, more customer satisfaction than ever before. So what it means is vision is great, but vision alone does not get you the kind of results in an organization. You need, in addition to strategic vision, you need strategic operations and strategic understanding of the customers and strategic knowledge of the market. All of these are necessary. So each leader might have some of it, but when you have people who have understanding of all of them, your opportunity for growth becomes significantly higher than any one of them.
Great. I have many takeaway points from the discussion. So since we have got the comparative statement of Steve Jobs has to be, a vision has to be, or strategy has to be so rigid and so strong, like how Steve has planned for it or dreamt for it. And the strategic planning has to be like Tim Cook, or execution, and which has to be more flexible, understand the reality of the market. So those are great examples to go with. Now we have said these two examples, we've got the strategic leadership or vision in the management. Finally, when we funnel down to such topics, so there are few things, do's, we will have a great list of do's whenever we go through any topic, but there are such things which are like don'ts, the things which we should not do, create a right vision. If we have to segregate, అంటే మనం లిస్ట్ చేయగలుచుకుంటే ఇవి చేయకూడదు అని అనుకుంటే ఒక లీడర్షిప్ విజన్ కి
do's and don'ts of strategic leadership. The key thing I would say, you need to know when to change your style of leadership, and you need to know when your strategic models are not working. Previously, we used to come up with a 5-year plan, and then a 3-year plan, and a 1-year plan, and all of that. But these days, the product lifetime cycles are shorter and shorter. Like, for example, people buy a new phone every 2 years, and actually they long to buy it even every year these days. So they say, okay, I buy a phone, and then I will give it to my spouse, or I will give it to my kids, and then I'll buy the latest phone. So what is happening is the customer aspirations have come to such a level that every 12 months they need, and they like, and they want new phone, which has got a lot of new features. If you are not able to fulfill in terms of design, in terms of features, in terms of novelty, stock price drops significantly. It didn't used to be like that. For example, think of a car and design the car and take it to the market. It used to take anywhere from 2 to 5 years. But with the electric cars, with the hybrid cars, with the hydrogen cars, with cars from China, Korea, Japan, Europe, United States, India, everywhere. Now, that's not very realistic to be able to do that. And even if you bought one model of Hyundai in India, by the time that fellow says, I'm ready to sell it 3 years later, even if he wants to buy the same model, he wants with a lot of new features within that. He wants a lot of changes. That means year after year after year, when you are releasing the same model of the same car, people expect a lot of different features, new features. That didn't used to be the case. Like Ambassador car from 1960s to 1980s, it used to be the same thing. As a matter of In fact, it was like a 1950s model of an ambassador car, used to be the one. Then came Maruti. And then in between there was a Fiat Padmini or Fiat. And now we have probably 20 different models of cars and SUVs and, motorcycles. Some of the motorcycles and cars cost more than the car themselves. Some of the motorcycles and scooters. Then, of course, now we talk about Bullet, and we talk about Bullet competing with Harley Davidson, like the amazing changes that are coming up just in the Indian market. For that to take place, we talk about incremental change in the visioning and in the design features. No, it doesn't work anymore. Because of this compressed time scale for the product life cycle, and also for the expectations of the market and expectations of customers, and the number of competitors that are available in the marketplace, the rapidity with which you need to design and add features, get the supply chain going, do the quality testing, make it all work, the demands are unbelievable for any kind of a person. So don't do's become really difficult. Number one, don't be too what you call slow in implementing and meeting the customer needs. But at the same time, don't be hasty to do something, because if you release a product, if it is not properly cooked, they will not look at any more products from you. So another way, what I would say, instead of giving you a list of don'ts, I would say whatever was the do last year may become a don't this year. So that means the strength of your product in the previous rev could very well become the weakness in the current rev. So the core incompetence of today might be built on a core competence of last year. So you have to assess what the customer needs and what the market needs and what the competitor offers on a much more frequent basis than you ever did. And this puts a lot of leaders on a really difficult situation. But this is the expectation that the current market and current customers provide. So you need to be moving all the time and learning all the time.
Yeah, I mean, actually, this last few minutes has triggered me to ask many more questions. It has opened many different questions to me. But out of curiosity, I'll keep it short and two. So one statement which you have quoted, we have two sections of products or services. That, for example, we have taken Ambassador, you have referred Bullet. Let's take iPhone. So these are the products which are unchanged. They made it very clear on the product and the services. On other hand, for example, we have taken Hyundai, a few other companies who are keep on providing different models, but the kind of prominence what we have for iPhone, Apple products, for example, or let's say that could be people still aspire to have an Ambassador even today as a vintage car, right? And people still are buying Bullet nowadays. So the kind of prominence a customer is giving to these products, though they are a bit costly compared to the other market, and there are another section of people who are keep on inventing or keep on revising their models and still trying to sustain the market. So these two are different. I mean, as per my experience, I've seen these two patterns of, I would call it as company's vision or company's strategies, how they have defined. So both are correct and both may be incorrect. So how one could differentiate if Ambassador would have thought to make more models, or if Apple would have thought to make it more cheaper and provide to have more customers? What is the decision that made them to stick to their standard vision for these three companies? And what made them, the other companies, to shift to different patterns of redefining their models or their services?
Excellent question. See, there are a couple of thoughts which we need to put into designing something that Apple does. See, Apple really looks at luxury product line. They believe if we can provide an authentic, differentiable, high value added, integrated features product, chances are that people will get attracted not only to the product, but also to the brand and to the company. So the customer loyalty for Apple is unbelievable. Brand value of Apple is unbelievable. So that means anything that you can put through Apple brand, majority of them will become very successful. If it has to fail, it has to be really, really a flop. So the companies like Apple think about not how many products they can sell. They're not into mass customers, or they are not into number games in terms of customer, but they are into measure by looking at it and saying, how much profit can I make for each product? So that means the company will always release a product at a much higher price. Obviously, you can go out and buy something similar for much cheaper price. Like, for example, take OnePlus in India. They release 2 times a year products, and from China, they try to imitate as many Apple iPhone features as possible every 6 months, right? And they sell it at half the price. The key part it comes down to is that kind of a Me Too products, there are many. As a matter of fact, there is a big market for products. For example, when the IBM PC came out, the Dell, the Michael Dell started making them out of his dormitories and started doing. There were Gateway and there were Compact and there were all kinds of things which do not add any kind of innovation in terms of the features, but they provided cheaper products. There is, same way, like for example, generics, like a tablets, medicines. India has become the generics capital for pharmaceuticals because anything that is out of patent, anything that is to create a generic product, we have Arvind, we have Reddy's, we have so many companies which will do all kinds of heart-related products, BP-related products, stomach-related products, all kinds of products, and they will be much cheaper, right? So you need to decide as a company, do you want to be a patentable, high-priced luxury where you are actually standing out saying, I need my own marketplace, a shop within shop. That's what Apple sets up most of the time. And for example, even naming, they call it iPhone. They don't call it smartphone.
Yeah.
They call it iPad, not tablet. This is MacBook, but it is not a PC. Yeah. So what they try to do, everything is bringing in the brand consciousness. And of course, if you look at any of their products, nowhere it is written Apple. But just by looking at the design, design became a strategic competitive differentiator, right? Their manufacturing became strategic competitive differentiator. Apple stores became a place where they can sell it at full price while you can get it on Amazon or somewhere else cheaper, but people like to Apple Store. I had written up a whole chapter on Apple Store and how they created a completely different way. When everybody is bankrupting the brick and mortar stores and going online like Amazon, Apple actually, has like a $20+ billion business just in the Apple stores, in addition to online. So there is a counter indication to think about whether you want to sell it as an Apple, as a brand, your products, or what you call like a premium brand, or you want Me Too products. You want them to be available cheaper, and you want to make money by number. If you can sell so many millions and the manufacturing becomes cheaper, so that means you make money. You make small money, but by numbers, you make a lot of money. Apple goes exactly the other way. We want to have less amount of products to be available, create even artificial scarcity, and they don't spend any money on advertising or PR or marketing because people are what you call dying to write about Apple stuff without Apple paying a single penny for the journalists and magazines, because people love to get Apple news on their magazine, because that sells their magazines. So it's an interesting reverse marketing kind of reverse thinking kind of approach that they do, and they have been extremely successful at it. And other companies can be like that. For example, Tesla is one such company who does similar to Apple. If I were to look at a person, a strategic leader like Steve Jobs, probably Elon Musk, both in arrogance as well as capability, will probably favorably compare himself to Steve Jobs. So like that, there are different kinds of leaders who are there.
Great. That's an amazing takeaway, sir. I mean, especially the last few minutes of discussion, which led to explore many topics. I think every question will give more and more direction to the people who has these kind of queries. And in crux, my favorite point in the whole journey, like one should have a strong and highly visible and very clear strategic vision as a leader, and we have to be more flexible and adaptable when it comes to planning and execution. I see these two are the key takeaways of this session, sir. I think this is really amazing, and this has eventually opened up a lot of questions to me. So I have huge list of things. Very glad to have you in this session, sir.
I think the idea of what you are saying, agile process, we have to think about agile leadership and agile execution as well. So the agility and resilience are going to really help strategic leaders to become much more effective. And as we move into 2030s in the next several years, rather than long-term kind of approaches that were there. So you need to have certain ability and awareness and the willingness to unlearn and relearn on a continuous basis. So another word I would say is leaders have to be continuous learners for them to be successful in the current environment. It is really enjoyable. You have come up with very good questions. I try to work with you on whatever way to give you some examples and stories. I look forward to working with you on another episode again.
Thank you, Prasad.